Welcome to Property Mama, Adventures in Real Estate. This is where I pull back the curtain and share all the shenanigans that goes on in the world of real estate. I've been buying and selling real estate for nearly 3 decades, and a lot goes on, let me tell you. If we've not met before, my name is Wendy Chamberlain, and I'm a buyer's advocate, buyer's agent here in Melbourne, Australia. Also a vendor advocate. We help clients buy and sell properties. So there's always good things going on. And I just want to say thank you to everybody who has warmly welcomed the Property Mama podcast. I'm so grateful for you for sharing with others, and also for some of the 5-star reviews that are coming in. I really, really appreciate that. And I love jumping on here every week and sharing my thoughts and the bits and pieces going on with all of the shenanigans. So in a previous episode, I talked about bidding at auction, and the strategy that I used recently for an auction that I went to for some beautiful first home buying clients. So if you recall from that previous episode, we were one of 2 bidders at that particular property. So the auction got started. Now, beforehand, we had determined where we saw the value in the property. I'd had conversations with the real estate agent that was selling the property. I did know this real estate agent. We'd had dealings before, so I had some confidence in what he was sharing with me regarding where he saw the value of the property. So just to recap for you, the property was advertised between 600,000 and 660,000, because here in Victoria, often real estate agents put a range, and generally it's a 10% spread on the range. So as a general rule, if you're a buyer out there and you're looking at properties and finding them wherever, that might be on realestate.com.au, it might be on Domain, or whatever your local platform is that you use, the range is a guide, and my experience has shown that vendors, when they're selling, generally their reserve price, the price that they're prepared to let the property go for, is either at the top of the range, and more often than not, it's over the top of the range. And that's where underquoting comes in. We've talked about underquoting before. And when I'm talking about underquoting, there is an aspect of what the agents do and all of their shenanigans with their marketing, what they're looking to achieve out of the outcome. And to some extent, the actual sale of the property is a byproduct, because there's all these other things the agent is trying to achieve by having a property to list, to sell, have it open for inspections, and have the public buyers come through and look at the property. And so many times the expectation of the vendor is way over the reserve, way over the guide price. The reserve is way over the guide price. Now, as I said, we do selling of property, so I have firsthand experience of what the agents do and why they do it. And oftentimes it is to generate buyer interest in a property, because they know, their experience has shown them, because it happens time and time again, is that buyers will stretch. Now, that's the word that's used in the industry, stretch, to buy a home that they love, that they've fallen in love with. And often that stretching involves them going over their budget. And so whilst they might be shopping, let's say they're shopping with 650,000, they know that the agent knows that that buyer may well stretch to 660,000. If this range is 6 to 660, they'd pitching it at the 600 mark, because that is the certainly where many first home buyers start. Here in Victoria, there are grants for buying a home that you get free stamp duty. No stamp duty to payable if your property is at 600,000 or less. So it is a marketing ploy that the real estate agents are using to get more people to come and look at the home that they happen to have for sale. Now, they know that people inquiring on the home, well, clearly it's one home when you've got dozens of people inquiring on it, there's only going to be one new owner of that home. So what happens to all these other people? So they know that those other people are still looking for a home, and other stock that that agent may have may be suitable for that particular person to buy. And so that's part of the tactic of this spread of the range, because whilst the property might be worth 660 or even over the top of the guide price of what they've said, people still, buyers that are inexperienced, particularly first home buyers, they actually think that they can buy a property that's advertised at 6 to 660 for 600,000. Now, unless you're in a very much a market that's going backwards or going down, that's not going to happen. Generally, the properties, they may sell in the range, but they sell above the range that's advertised. And I think that is quite a particular thing here to Melbourne and Victoria. Even in other states of Australia, they don't necessarily even have guide prices. They, it's all a bit smoke and mirrors with what they're doing, which is why buyers get so confused. They've put in, look, happily here in Victoria, they have put in various laws to try and eliminate all of that. And look, it does to some level, but I say the water always gets around the rock. And so there's always going to be a way for things to be manipulated for the outcome that the agent is looking for. So in other states, it might be 1 million plus offers over, and that's been legislated. You can't say that here in Victoria. You have to actually put prices on or contact agent, and that's a tactic in itself, because they are wanting the buyer to ring them up and have a conversation. Because in the digital world we are in now, it is very easy for you not even to have to communicate prior to stepping a foot in the property to inspect it when it's advertised on a Saturday open at 10 a.m. You can just make inquiries behind your computer on your keyboard and find out the information you need, and then show up, and then they'll ask you questions at the door, identification questions. So you're not even really having to interact with people. Whereas if they put contact agent on it, then you have to make the effort, pick up the phone and have a conversation, because real estate agents, the ones that are really good at what they do, it's through their ability to speak to people, understand what their needs and their wants are, and to communicate and start building that rapport and building that relationship with a buyer. So this is why there's different tactics that the real estate agents will use, because they know that there'll be one buyer for that home they've got open, but they've got all these other properties that they're trying to get sold as well. Plus there's all other properties that are constantly looking for new stock to sell to people. And so that's all part of the process. So the auction that we attended recently, as I said, I'd spoken to the agent, and he had said he thought it sat in the 650 to 680 range from value perspective, but then advertises it at 6 to 660. So clearly underquoted, and the expectation of the vendor that he was managing through the campaign would have been toward the top of that level or above. Of course, on the day of an auction, the market will tell you what a property is worth. It's why sometimes properties pass in. And when a property passes in, that means that the people that are there on the day bidding on the property have not effectively satisfied the reaching the reserve that the vendor is looking for. That's not to say that after the fact, in the next few days, etc., that follow, that the vendor's not going to sell it for that price. They may well, if no one else comes in. But on the day, that's where they're wanting, that's where their expectation is. Now, oftentimes vendors' expectations are way over where the value of the property might otherwise be seen to be. And there is a little bit of adjustment that does take place over the next few days, depending on the circumstances of the vendor. If the vendor needs to sell for whatever their own personal reasons are, they will start to become more and more reasonable as to the price point meeting the market where it is. If they don't have to sell and they can hold on to the property, well, then they might dig their heels in and say, no, that's my price. They may well have a changeover value they need to get, a price they must get in order for them to take that next step that they need. And so fair enough for them. They'll say, no, this is my price and I want my price. And they make that decision, and that's totally a personal decision for that vendor. So this is just some of the mechanics and things that go on with real estate. So the auction starts, and the other buyer, there only ended up being myself and this other person, started the bidding at 600. I wanted to see if anybody else was around, and then I jumped in at 610. That person bid at 620. Now it's jumping up in $10,000 lots, which is not anywhere near it's slowing down, getting towards the end of the auction. I was mindful that we'd made a decision that we didn't want to spend more than $660 on this property. That was our budget. $660 was our budget. It was the top of the guide price. Knowing that this other person was there, well, it was great because there was another third person, another buyer that had been making inquiries, but they ended up not showing up on the day because they couldn't get their finances sorted. So they chose not to bid without any finance, which is a very smart move. So the bidding continued, and it was jumping up in $10,000 lots. So one of the strategies that I employ when I am bidding at auction is, before I talk about the strategy, you've got to watch what the auction is doing, because every single auction is different, because obviously it's a different house, different price points. You're going to have different mix of buyers there. You're going to have different auctioneers, and you're going to have different real estate agents. And all of these play into the mechanism and the speed and the flow of an auction, and also the skill set of the auctioneer, because they're not all as skillful as each other. Some are excellent and they're very experienced, and they know how to work a crowd, and they're very good with their rapport and creating that rapport with the buyers in the crowd. Some are stiff as cardboard and it's super awkward when they're trying to do what they're doing, because they just don't have the experience. I don't know. They don't seem to have the people skills that are required, because it's actually quite enjoyable to go to an auction where it's a great auctioneer. They know what they're doing and they're able to make it all flow. Obviously, ultimately, they can only do what they can do if people are not bidding. And so they work within, I guess, those paradigms of what they have. So the way that this auction was going, it was just between me, and it was between this one other person. So it was just the two of us. And so, as I said, I knew that from having spoken to the real estate agent, and he confirmed when I arrived before the auction. I asked him how many buyers are here, and he gestured to the person that was behind him and said, well, they're here. The other person hasn't come here, and there's no one else really. So when the auction had started and we were bidding back and forth, I am always very, very mindful of what our reserve is. We, as the buyer, we have set our reserve before the day starts, before we get there. And so I'm very mindful of where we are with that and how far away we are from where we're prepared to stop bidding, and how fast or the flow of the auction is going, because you can tell, I can tell, because I've been doing this a very long time. I can tell when an auction still has legs, when it's still going to keep going and going and going, or whether it's starting to run out of steam. So I've previously spoken about that. I can watch buyers bidding at auction, and I can tell when they're close to their budget maximum or when they're over their budget maximum. And it's really funny when you go to auctions. There's this body language that people have, and it's all very serious. And they'll be standing there and they'll cross their arms, and it's all very straight. It's all very, very, very serious. And no one's smiling. No one laughs at the auctioneer's jokes. And these people are quite funny. I will say that. They make funny jokes. I laugh. I might be the only one laughing. No one else does. And oftentimes there's a what I call a halftime break, is that when the auction starts, and maybe sometimes the auction doesn't even start, no one makes any bids. But an auctioneer will often say, just one moment, I'll go and confer with my vendor. And so they'll pause the auction so that they can go inside and speak to their vendor. And it's a multifaceted tactic. Number one, if they're not getting a lot of traction, they're not getting any bidders, or they might only have one bidder and they haven't reached the reserve yet, and they're way off from where their reserve is, it's a stalling tactic. It's a tactic that they can use to buy more time, because they know people are the buyers that are there, that oftentimes they're stressed, they're nervous, they haven't done it before, haven't done it for a long time, they don't know what they're doing. And so by leaving them out there, that term, you leave them to sweat, that's what they're doing. But if the auction is going well and it's gaining momentum, then oftentimes they will call for a halftime break to go in and confer with the vendor to see where they are prepared to sell the property. Have they reached the reserve? Are they prepared to let the property go for where it actually is? Or if they're not, what that would be. And then sometimes they don't even do the halftime auction. Sometimes they just go all the way through, because the momentum of the auction is going. It's going. So on this particular one, knowing what our budget was and knowing that it was going up in $10,000 lots, my aim was to slow the auction down, because I wanted us to get to what our budget was slower. And this, obviously, I can only slow it down so much because it depends on what the other buyers there are prepared to spend and what their budgets are. So we were going up in $10,000 lots. So I said, I'll give you $5,000. The agent turned to me and he said, I'm taking 10. Now remember, there was the other bidder and there was me. So the other bidder had bid up a 10,000 lot, and I said, I'll give you 5. No, he's not taking that. So he's looking around the crowd. And I said, I'll give you 5. And he goes, no, I'm not doing that. He's looking around. No one else is bidding. He goes, I'll take your 5. Well, I know you will, because there's no one else to bid here. And we weren't at the reserve either. And I knew that because we were, I think, about 640,000, I think, at this point. So we weren't even toward the top of it. We're like 20 grand off the top of the guide price. And then additionally to that, the agent had said he thought the value was even 20, 30 above that. And so that's what he would have been communicating to his vendor. So his vendor's not going to sell, likely not going to sell much less than that. Plus, he would have known that the other buyer likely had more budget, and he was dealing with me, who was there in a professional capacity for my client. So I had not divulged to the agent what our budget was or anything like that. But it's interesting. And so the other person bid another 5. So he's turns and looks at me. And I said, are you in a position to sell the property? And he said, just one moment, I'll go and check. So then he did his halftime break to go in, because I think at that point we were at 650. I think we jumped to 650. So if I did they did 640. I did 650 for 45. They did 650. Now, keep in mind that my budget is 660. If we're going up in $5,000 lots, if I bid 655, the likelihood is that the other bidder, if they have momentum behind them and money and are prepared to spend it, which I thought they did based on them jumping from going up in the 10s, and I'm pulling the auction back, and then we're still bidding in 5s. If the bid's with them at 650 and I go to 655, they're likely to go 660. Our max is 660. I've got nowhere to go. You see, because I'm the only one competing against this other buyer. And if I'm not going to be bidding over 660, because that's my authorized budget is 660, and they've bid 660, I can't go $1 over. I don't have authority to do it. We don't go over our budget. And so I am just running all these scenarios through my head while I'm waiting for the auctioneer to come back and say the property's on the market, which is what they did. They came out and said, yes, they're in a position to sell, the property's on the market. So the property was on the market at 650, and the bid was being held by the other person. So at that point, they are the one buying the property because it's on the market and they're the leading bidder. So he's looking at me. And so I tactically, based on how the flow of the auction was going, decided to bid to 660. Because as I said, if I went 655, she's going to come over the top of me. I bid 660 straight away, 665. She's bid over the top of me. So we were out because we were out at 660. And so the property was sold to this other person for 665. Sold for 665 because our max budget was 660. So you can see there how I used the strategy to slow the auction down, and knowing the likelihood was based on how the auction was going, my research on the property and conversations with the real estate agent and the momentum of the auction and what the other bidder was doing, where the auction was going to go and where it was going to land on price. And the likelihood was that we were going to get outbid, which we did. But my job is to buy the property and bid as well with as much strategy as I can to buy that property. It just happened we didn't have the money that someone else had. And that happens at auction. You get outbid. You get outbid because someone else has a bigger budget than you, or even sometimes they see more value in the property. We have that happen to us sometimes when we've done a building and pest inspection on properties where it hasn't been bad enough for us to pull out of bidding on the property, but given that there are bits and pieces that need to be repaired on the property, our client then reassesses what the budget is that they wish to spend on the property to secure it. So they still like the property, would like to buy the property, but they have to factor in that if it needs some major renovations or structural work, or there's bits and pieces that have to be done to the property, that mostly has to come off the buying budget. And so that will readjust what we're prepared to spend to buy a property. So there's lots of moving parts when it comes to real estate. And no two properties are the same, and no two auctions are the same either. They have a mind of their own because you've got different parties there all the time, as I said. So if you would love us to come and bid for you at auction, that is what we do. chamberlainadvocates.com.au, we can do that for you. We also offer our full advocacy service, which means that we hunt and find the properties for you. The last few properties that I've purchased for clients have been off market, which means they haven't been advertised to the general public. And so what I love about that is you're not necessarily getting a bargain, but you're not competing. And the example that I just shared there with the property, it was on the market and the vendor was prepared to sell it at 650. Our budget was 660. If we had found that property off market and the other person didn't know about it, there was every possibility that we could have purchased that property within our budget. It wasn't offered off market, that one, but we find so many that are. So reach out across your favourite social channels or go to chamberlainadvocates.com.au and we can have a conversation about how we can help you with your property dreams and get you into your ideal home. I just love what I do. We work with lots of first-time buyers, buyers that are looking to upsize, downsize. We also help you sell your homes as well if that's what you're after. And I also have my getstartedinproperty.com.au mentoring program. If you're not based locally here in Melbourne or Victoria, Australia, and you are interested in learning what is involved to buy a property, buy real estate, this is what my course helps you with. It's a step-by-step guide, self-paced. You work through the modules when you have free time to digest all that information. And the course is designed to give you the confidence to finally be able to buy your own home, to know all the steps. Because I say it's not just about not lining up your ducks, it's knowing which ducks have to be in the line. And that's what we cover in the Get Started in Property mentoring program. So once again, thank you so much for joining me today on my latest episode of Property Mama Adventures in Real Estate. Be sure to like, follow and share, and really would love it if you're enjoying what you're hearing to give us a triple thumbs up review. And I really look forward to speaking to you again soon. Bye-bye for now.